HFY 9 was a city built in space, and I lived where nobody important wanted to live. The upper levels glittered with gardens, luxury shops, diplomatic halls, and private residences. Down on level 31, the lights flickered, the pipes leaked, and refugees slept wherever they could find room. I owned a small café called Miller S. I'd been a military mechanic before that. 12 years fixing ships that were usually being shot at had taught me one important lesson. Broken things rarely fix themselves. HFY 9 was becoming very broken. Food prices kept climbing. Corporations were cutting aid. Clinics were running out of medicine. Every morning, more hungry faces appeared outside my cafe. Then I noticed the girl. She was tiny, blue-skinned, and wearing an oversized jacket. She stood outside my cafe for nearly 10 minutes, staring at the sandwiches. Eventually, she came inside. When one customer blocked my view, she grabbed a sandwich and ran. Someone shouted, "Thief!" I watched the door close behind her. I could have called security. I didn't. If a child has to steal food, I said quietly, the problem isn't the child. Then I made another sandwich and left it where she could easily reach it. The next morning, I made 3 extra sandwiches. I told myself it was because business had been good. That was not true. By 0700, the cafe was full. Cargo workers crowded the tables, arguing over freight schedules. 2 refugee families shared a single bowl of soup. An old barren trader sat by the window, counting credits with the concentration of someone defusing an explosive. I kept glancing toward the entrance. At 0716, the girl appeared. She stood outside for a few seconds, watching through the glass. Then she came in. Her eyes immediately found the display case. I turned my back and began cleaning a cup that was already clean. She moved toward the sandwiches. A few seconds later, I heard the door open, then close. I looked over. She was gone. One sandwich was missing. I smiled despite myself. The next day, she came again. Same time, same sandwich, same quick escape. On the 4th morning, I deliberately placed one near the edge of the counter. She noticed. I pretended not to. Her antennae twitched. She looked at me. I studied the coffee machine. She took the sandwich. Gone. I waited until the door closed before looking toward the security camera. There was something strange about her. She never ate the food. I knew because the camera showed her leaving with the sandwich pressed tightly against her chest. She never stopped in the corridors. She never opened the wrapper. She carried it somewhere. That evening, after closing, I sat alone in the cafe and reviewed the recordings. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Every theft happened within a 3-minute window. Always the same route. Always alone. I paused the recording and zoomed in. The girl looked exhausted. Her jacket was too large. One sleeve had been repaired with electrical tape. There were dark marks beneath her eyes. I leaned back. I had spent years repairing machines by tracing problems back to their source. A missing sandwich was not the problem. Neither was the girl. The problem was wherever she was taking those sandwiches. I shut down the cafe lights. Then I opened the door and stepped into the corridor. Haven 9 looked different after midnight. The upper levels were bright enough to make the station look prosperous. Down here, half the lights were broken. The girl had disappeared 20 minutes earlier. I checked the direction she'd taken. Then I started walking. I wasn't following her to catch her. I was following her because I needed to understand. After 12 years in the military, I had learned that the first thing you see is rarely the real problem. Usually, you have to keep walking. So I did. And somewhere ahead of me, a little blue girl was carrying a sandwich to someone who needed it more than she did. I followed her for almost 20 minutes. She was good at disappearing. Not military good. Not the kind of good that required training. She simply knew Haven 9 better than I did. She slipped through service corridors, crossed maintenance bridges, and twice ducked through doors that looked abandoned. I kept my distance and let her choose the route. Eventually, we reached level 38. The station maps listed it as an inactive residential sector. That meant nobody with money wanted to live there. Most of the lights were dead. Pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping condensation onto the floor. Several doors had been welded shut. Others stood open, revealing empty rooms filled with broken furniture. The girl slowed. I stopped behind a support column. She looked around before entering one of the apartments. I waited. Then I heard a voice. "Is that you, Mia?" The girl's name. Mia. "Yes, Mama." I stepped closer to the doorway. I could see the room through the opening. There was almost nothing inside. One bed, a damaged table, a small heating unit, an old medical monitor that looked older than I was. Mia placed the sandwich on the table. Her mother was lying on the bed. She was the same pale blue as her daughter, but much thinner. Her breathing was shallow. A blanket covered most of her body, and a medical patch blinked weakly against her neck. "I brought you something," Mia whispered. Her mother smiled. "You shouldn't steal, sweetheart." "I didn't, Mia hesitated. "I found it." Her mother looked at the sandwich, then at her daughter. She understood. So did I. Stepped away from the doorway before either of them could see me. I returned to the cafe without making a sound. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat behind the counter with the station medical database open on my terminal. I searched every symptom I had seen. Blue skin, respiratory weakness, progressive organ failure, nutritional deficiency. The database returned several possibilities. Most required medical testing. One matched closely. Chronic cellular degradation. The treatment existed. That was the good news. The bad news was the price. I stared at the number on the screen for a long time. I checked my savings. Then I checked again. It wasn't enough. Not even close. I closed the medical database. For a few minutes, I sat in the dark cafe listening to the ventilation system. Then I opened an old storage drawer beneath the counter. Inside was a military identification card. It had not been used in 11 years. Beside it was an encrypted access key. I hadn't touched either one since leaving the service. I held the key between my fingers. There were parts of my past I had worked very hard to forget. Places I had been. Things I had transported. People who had paid me not to ask questions. I had promised myself that life was finished. But promises were easy to keep when nobody was dying. I looked toward the empty display case. Tomorrow, Mia would come for another sandwich. This time, I was going to give her more than food. I opened the cafe at 5 the next morning. Mia arrived at 0716. She stopped outside the door, as usual, and looked through the glass. I was already waiting. Not obviously. I was making coffee. When she entered, I placed a sandwich on the counter. She stared at it. Then she stared at me. "You can take it," I said. Her antennae lowered slightly. "I didn't steal anything." "I know." She looked confused. I pushed the sandwich closer. "Take it." She picked it up carefully. "Why?" I shrugged. "Maybe I made too many." It was a terrible lie. She knew it. I knew it. Neither of us mentioned that. She tucked the sandwich beneath her jacket. Then she ran. I watched the door close. After she left, I went into my office and opened the encrypted account connected to my old military identification. The account still existed. That surprised me. The balance surprised me more. Years ago, I had been assigned to logistics operations that officially never happened. Cargo disappeared from manifests. Equipment changed ownership without paperwork. Sometimes I transported things that governments claimed did not exist. I had been paid very well. I had also been careful. Most of the money had remained untouched. I transferred enough to cover the first treatment shipment. Then I stopped. There was no reason to risk everything at once. First, I needed the medicine. Second, I needed to know whether it would work. I contacted a supplier through an encrypted channel. The reply came 12 minutes later. Payment accepted. Delivery in 6 hours. No questions. That was the advantage of old connections. People who worked outside official systems valued silence. At noon, the package arrived disguised as industrial replacement parts. I carried it into the café's storage room. The medicine was small, expensive, and probably the most important thing I had ever held. That evening, I returned to level 38. I didn't enter the apartment. I left the package beside the door with a note. For Sarah, follow the instructions. Then I walked away. I had gone 20 meters when I heard the door open. Wait, Mia's voice. I turned. She stood in the doorway holding the package. What's this? Medicine. For Mama? Yes. Her eyes narrowed. How did you know her name? I didn't answer immediately. She was a child, but she wasn't stupid. Finally, I said, you mentioned it. She hadn't We both knew that. Mia looked down at the package. Then back at me. Are you a doctor? No. A rich person? I almost laughed. No. Then why? I looked at the apartment behind her. Because I knew what it was like to watch someone suffer while having no useful way to stop it. Because I had spent years fixing machines while people died around them. Because sometimes the right thing was obvious. Instead, I said the simplest thing. Your mother needs it. Mia hugged the package against her chest. For the first time since I met her, she didn't run. Thank you, she whispered. I nodded. Then I walked back toward the cafe. Behind me, the door closed. And for the first time in years, I felt like maybe I had repaired something that mattered. The medicine worked. Not immediately. The first 2 days, Sarah remained weak. Mia still came to the cafe every morning, but she stopped stealing. I left food on the counter anyway. On the third morning, Mia arrived smiling. It was a small smile, but I noticed. Mama is breathing better, she said. That's good. She asked who you were. What did you tell her? That you make sandwiches. That's accurate. Mia studied me. You knew I was stealing. I kept wiping the counter. Yes. How long? Since the first day. Her antennae lifted. You knew? I have cameras. You saw me every time? Every time. She looked genuinely offended. Then why didn't you stop me? I placed another sandwich beside the register. Because you weren't stealing from me. She frowned. I was. No. You were taking food to your mother. That is stealing. Technically. She considered that. Will security arrest me? No. Why? Because I told them the missing sandwiches were inventory mistakes. Mia stared at me. You lied? I am a former soldier. We occasionally get creative with paperwork. That earned the smallest laugh. I pretended not to notice. For the next several weeks, Sarah slowly recovered. I continued researching her illness. I found nutritional supplements that weren't expensive and changed the cafe menu so I could prepare them without attracting attention. Mia began spending afternoons at the cafe. At first, she sat quietly in the corner. Then she started helping. She carried plates. She wiped tables. She learned how to operate the old coffee machine, although I eventually banned her from touching it without supervision. It bites, I explained. It doesn't have teeth. You haven't seen the inside. She believed me. One evening, after closing, Mia sat across from me at the counter. Jack? Yeah? Why are you helping us? I looked at her for a long moment. There were many answers. None of them seemed necessary. Because somebody should. She lowered her eyes. My mother says humans are strange. She might be right. She says most people would have called security. Most people probably would. Why aren't you most people? I thought about that. I remembered military corridors, burning ships, men who had become numbers on casualty reports. I remembered learning that sometimes survival depended on one person deciding to do something before anyone gave permission. Finally, I said, I don't know. Mia nodded as though that answer made sense. Then she smiled. I think you good. I looked away. Don't tell anyone. It ruined my reputation. She laughed. This time, I laughed too. I didn't know it yet, but that little conversation would become the last peaceful memory I had for a long time. Because while Mia was learning how to use my coffee machine, someone else was learning who I used to be. And they had started looking for me. The first sign that something was wrong came at 2:13. I was sitting alone in my office, balancing the cafe accounts, when the terminal displayed a message I hadn't seen in years. Transaction review. Manual audit required. I stopped typing. The account I had used for Sarah's medicine was supposed to be invisible. Not untraceable. Nothing was truly untraceable. Invisible was different. The account had been created during my military years, when certain governments needed people who could move cargo without asking where it came from. I had thought the account was dormant enough to be forgotten. Apparently, someone remembered. I opened the transaction record. There was only one transfer. The medicine. Beside it was a reference code. I knew that code. My stomach tightened. Someone had traced the payment back through 3 shell companies and found the original account. Then they had found me. I closed the terminal. For several minutes, I sat without moving. I could leave HAVEN9. That was the sensible option. I had a ship in the lower docking ring, enough credits for fuel, and a dozen old contacts who could make me disappear. People had been looking for me before. I had always survived by leaving before they arrived. But this time there was Mia and Sarah. I thought about the girl standing in my cafe every morning, pretending she wasn't hungry. I thought about Sarah's breathing improving. Leaving would keep me alive. Staying would put them in danger. At 5 o'clock, I opened the cafe. I didn't tell Mia anything. She arrived at 7:16 carrying a small bag. Mama says thank you. Tell her she's welcome. Mia climbed onto a chair behind the counter. I brought something. She pulled out a tiny metal object. It looked like a broken circuit board. What is it? Mama repaired these systems before she got sick. She says they old station equipment. I examined it. The design was ancient, older than Haven 9's current infrastructure. Your mother worked maintenance? Systems engineering. That explained the strange familiarity I noticed in Sarah's medical equipment. She hadn't simply survived on this level. She had once understood the station better than most people alive. I handed the component back. Tell your mother I said she's wasted on retirement. Mia smiled. Then the cafe door opened. 3 strangers entered. They weren't traders. They weren't refugees. Their clothing was ordinary, but their movements weren't They looked around without appearing to look around. Military habits. Professional. One of them met my eyes. I knew immediately. They had found me. I reached beneath the counter and quietly locked the cafe's back door. The man approached. Jack Miller? I wiped my hands on a towel. Depends who's asking. He smiled without warmth. Someone who remembers what you used to do. Behind him, Mia had stopped moving. I looked at her, then at the 3 men. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing. I wasn't running. The man stopped 3 steps from the counter. His 2 companions remained near the door. Nobody spoke for several seconds. I recognized the insignia hidden beneath the man's jacket. Not the organization itself, but the style. Private military contractors. The kind hired by corporations, governments, and people who preferred not to appear in official records. You're a long way from home, I said. So are you. I own this cafe. You used to move restricted military cargo through 3 separate war zones. I folded the towel and placed it beside the register. That was a long time ago. Not long enough. Mia was still behind the counter. I looked at her. Mia, go upstairs. She didn't move. Jack, go. She shook her head. The man's eyes shifted toward her. That's the girl? Something inside me became very still. Dawn, he smiled. We aren't interested in children. Good. We interested in you. Then talk to me. He placed a small device on the counter. A hologram appeared. It showed an old photograph of me standing beside a military transport ship. I was younger, thinner, and carrying a rifle. Mia stared at the image. Is that you? Yes. What happened? Nothing interesting. The contractor laughed softly. You disappeared after the Kestrel run. Took 12 million credits with you. I didn't take anything. You were paid. I was paid to deliver cargo. You kept the remainder. I survived. That's usually expensive. His smile disappeared. You've been using those funds again. For medicine. He glanced toward the medical package sitting on a shelf. Then toward Mia. You wasting money on strangers. I looked at him. She's not a stranger. The words came out before I thought about them. Mia's eyes widened. The contractor leaned closer. You making this personal? No. I reached beneath the counter. His hand moved toward his weapon. I stopped. Then I pulled out a coffee mug. Coffee? He stared at me. No, your mistake. I turned toward the machine. The first gunshot shattered the window. I moved before the sound finished. The mug hit the floor. I grabbed Mia and pulled her beneath the counter as another round tore through the wall. The cafe erupted into noise. Glass fell. Tables overturned. Someone screamed outside. The attackers had expected an old mechanic. They had not expected me to remember exactly how to fight. I pulled the emergency shutters closed. The first contractor rushed forward. I caught his wrist, twisted, and drove his face into the counter. He dropped. The second raised his weapon. I threw the coffee machine at him. It wasn't elegant. It didn't need to be. He went down. The third man backed toward the door. I pointed at him. Leave. He hesitated. Then he ran. Mia stared at me from beneath the counter. Jack, yeah? You said you were a mechanic. I am. She looked at the unconscious man. Mechanics don't do that. I looked at the ruined cafe. Bad mechanics do. Outside, sirens began approaching. I knew they wouldn't be enough. Those three men were only the beginning. Someone had found me. Someone with money. Someone patient enough to send professionals after a cafe owner. I looked at Mia, then toward the apartment where Sarah was recovering. For years, I had believed my past was something I could leave behind. I finally understood the truth. You don't leave the past behind. You only decide who gets hurt when it catches you. The security officers arrived 4 minutes later. By then, the cafe looked like a machine someone had thrown down a staircase. One table was broken. The front window was gone. The coffee machine had suffered a fate I considered personally offensive. The two men were unconscious. The third was gone. Security entered with weapons raised, then lowered them when they saw me standing behind the counter. What happened? One officer asked. 3 men attacked my cafe. Why? I looked at the unconscious contractor. Old business. The officer didn't like that answer. Neither did I. They took the 2 men away. I gave my statement. I left out several details. The officers left too. Then I locked the door. Mia hadn't moved from her hiding place. Are you hurt? She shook her head. Where is Mama? At home. Is she safe? For now. Mia looked at me. You knew they would come. No, you were ready. I didn't answer. She looked toward the damaged window. Are they coming back? Probably. Her antennae lowered. What do we do? I looked around the cafe. For 12 years, I repaired military equipment. When something failed, I didn't panic. I isolated the problem, found what still worked, and built a solution around it. So I did the same thing now. First, I checked the cafe's cameras. Then the communication system. Then the station maps. Someone had disabled 3 security cameras around level 31 before the attack. That meant the men had prepared. They hadn't come looking for a fight. They had come expecting me to surrender. That was useful information. I called an old contact. The connection took 11 seconds. A distorted voice answered. You shouldn't have called. I need information. About? Who sent 3 contractors to HAVEN 9? Silence. Then. Jack, leave the station. I can Then you already dead. I need their employer. Another silence. You still the same. I'll take that as a compliment. It isn't. A file appeared on my terminal. I opened it. The contractor's organization was listed under a corporate security company I recognized. Beneath it was a second name. A private intelligence group. Beneath that was a third. A shipping consortium. I kept reading. The chain went deeper than it should have. Someone had spent serious money finding me. Then I saw the reason. The old military account wasn't merely a forgotten account. It contained records, names, routes, cargo manifests, evidence of operations that several governments had officially denied ever existing. I closed the file. Mia was watching me. Are you in trouble? Yes. Big trouble? I thought about the men who had just attacked my cafe. Big enough. She was quiet. Then she asked the question I had been avoiding. Are you going to leave? I looked at her. I could have. There was still time. I could take my ship, disappear into the outer systems, and let someone else deal with the consequences. But I remembered the first sandwich. The one she had stolen because her mother was starving. I remembered Sarah opening that door. I remembered Mia asking why I had helped them. Because somebody should. I looked toward the broken window. No, I said. I am staying. Mia nodded. She didn't smile. She simply moved closer and stood beside me. For some reason, that was enough. I spent the next morning rebuilding the cafe. Not because I believed it was safe. Because leaving it broken would mean the men had won. I replaced the window, repaired the counter, and found a replacement coffee machine from a cargo mechanic who owed me a favor. By noon, Miller's looked almost normal again. Almost. Mia sat at the counter watching me work. You done? Have to fix everything, she said. I know. Then why do you? Because I done like broken things. She looked at the damaged wall. Even people? I stopped tightening a bolt. Especially people. She didn't answer. At 0716 the next morning, she arrived with Sarah. It was the first time I seen her mother outside their apartment. Sarah was still thin, but she was standing. That was enough. Jack, she said. Sarah, she offered her hand. I shook it. I don't know how to thank you. You already did. She looked confused. How? You got better. Sarah smiled faintly. Mia climbed onto her usual chair. Jack says he's not leaving. Sarah's expression changed. She looked at me carefully. Is that wise? No. Good. I laughed. It was the first time she had seen me do it. Then the lights went out. The cafe fell silent. Emergency illumination came on a second later. Red. My terminal remained dark. I knew immediately this wasn't a station-wide failure. Someone had isolated the entire block. I stepped outside. The corridor was empty. Too empty. HFY was never quiet. I looked upward. Every security camera had stopped moving. Someone had taken control of the local network. Sarah came beside me. How many? I looked at her. You understand systems? I designed maintenance architecture for this sector. I stared at her. You never mentioned that. You never asked. Fair enough. I pointed toward the ceiling. Can you restore the cameras? Maybe. Do it. She moved toward the maintenance panel. Mia watched us. What can I do? I looked at her. For a moment, I almost told her nothing. Then I remembered something Sarah had said. She had designed the station systems. Mia had grown up around them. You know the old emergency network? Mia nodded. Mama taught me. Can you access it? Some of it. Then find me every active camera in this sector. She smiled. Okay. Sarah opened the panel. Mia ran toward the old terminal. I stood in the middle of the cafe and listened. Far down the corridor, something moved. Then another sound. Boots. Heavy. Professional. More than 3 people this time. I checked the small pistol hidden beneath the counter. Then I looked at Sarah and Mia. They were working. Calmly. No screaming. No panic. For some reason, that made me calmer too. The attackers had come expecting an old mechanic alone in a cafe. They were about to discover that Haven 9 had given me something money couldn't buy. People worth protecting. And this time, I wasn't going to fight alone. The footsteps stopped outside the cafe. Mia looked up from the terminal. I found them. How many? 8. Sarah glanced at me. 8 what? People in the corridor. The first impact hit the front door. The reinforced glass cracked. I moved behind the counter and pulled the emergency shutters halfway down. Sarah, stay behind me. She shook her head. I can help. I know. That was why I trusted her. The door shattered. 8 figures entered through the smoke. They wore civilian clothing, but their weapons were military grade. The leader stepped forward. Jack Miller, you are ordered to surrender. No. You understand the consequences? Yes. He raised his weapon. Before he could fire, the lights changed. Every screen in the cafe turned blue. Mia smiled. I found the old network. The corridor cameras activated simultaneously. Every attacker appeared on our monitors. But there was more. Doors began locking around them. Security barriers dropped from the ceiling. The station's ancient emergency system had awakened. The leader looked around. What did you do? I pointed toward Mia. She did it. He raised his weapon again. I fired first. The shot struck his weapon and knocked it from his hand. The other attackers scattered. They had expected a fight. They hadn't expected the station itself to become part of it. One tried the rear exit. Sarah locked it. Another attempted to disable the cameras. Mia redirected the feed. 2 more entered the cafe from the side corridor. I met them halfway. The fight lasted seconds. One went down after I broke his wrist. The other surrendered when he saw the first man unconscious on the floor. The remaining attackers tried to retreat. The doors wouldn't open. Then Haven 9 security finally arrived. They entered cautiously, weapons raised. The officer looked at the scene. Then at me. What happened? I pointed at the contractors. They attacked my cafe. The officer looked at the sealed doors. Who locked the sector? Sarah raised her hand. I did. The officer stared. Then Mia raised hers. I helped. He looked at both of them. Then at me. I shrugged. They good with computers. The officer almost smiled. Almost. The contractors were taken away. For several minutes, nobody spoke. Then Mia climbed onto the counter. Did we win? I looked at the broken door. No. She frowned. We stopped them. That the same thing. What is winning? I thought about it. Winning is when they don't come back. Sarah looked at me. And will they? I didn't answer. Because I already knew. The organization behind those men would not stop. Not after discovering what was hidden inside my old accounts. Not after learning I was still alive. But now I had a choice. I could keep running. Or I could finally finish what I had started 12 years ago. I walked into my office and opened the old encrypted account. The balance was still there. So were the names, the routes, the debts, and the people who had once believed Jack Miller had disappeared forever. I began making calls. One by one, old contacts answered. Some were surprised. Some were afraid. One simply said, I wondered when you come back. I looked through the cafe window at Mia and Sarah. I need a favor, I said. Then I started rebuilding my old network. Not to run. This time, I was building something that could stay. By sunrise, Haven 9 knew my name. Not because I was important. Because the attackers had made the mistake of choosing level 31. People there remembered things. They remembered who had given them food when the distribution center closed. They remembered which cafe had allowed refugees to sleep inside during power failures. They remembered the children who had eaten for free because I had quietly marked their bills as paid. So when word spread that someone had come for me, people started arriving. First came the cargo workers, then the mechanics, then the refugees. Within 2 hours, the corridor outside Miller's was crowded. I stood behind the counter and watched them gather. You don't have to do this, I told them. An old trader shook his head. You fed my grandchildren. A mechanic raised his damaged hand. You fixed my transport for free. A refugee woman stepped forward. You gave my family a place to sleep. I didn't know what to say. I had never considered any of those things important. They had simply needed doing. Sarah stood beside me. Mia was behind the counter, staring at the crowd. Jack, she whispered. Yeah? Why are they here? I looked at the people filling the corridor. Because you aren't T the only one who knows how to steal. She frowned. What? I smiled. They, stealing your problem. She still didn't, understand. I did. The contractors had expected me to stand alone. Instead, they had given Haven 9 a reason to stand together. By midday, security had identified the organization behind the attacks. A private corporate intelligence network called Helix Meridian. They had been searching for me because of the military cargo I had transported years earlier. But there was another reason. My old network contained records proving that several corporations had illegally supplied weapons during the border wars. If those records became public, entire companies would collapse. Helix Meridian wanted them destroyed. I wanted them released. That afternoon, I connected my old system to the station network. Sarah helped bypass the security architecture. Mia watched the data streams. You, going to publish everything? Yes. They come after you. They already did. She thought about that. Then why are you smiling? They always wanted to see what happens when powerful people discover they made a paperwork mistake. Sarah laughed quietly. It was the first time I had heard her laugh without coughing afterward. The files went public at 1842. Across Haven 9, terminals lit up. Names appeared. Contracts, payments, secret shipments, proof. The station went silent. Then every screen displayed the same message. Archive release complete. Helix Meridian responded within minutes. They threatened legal action, then financial sanctions, then violence. Nobody listened. By midnight, 3 corporations had suspended operations. 2 directors had disappeared, and the Galactic Council had opened an investigation. I closed the terminal. Mia looked at me. Is it over? No. Are we safe? I looked toward the station doors. No. She seemed disappointed. I crouched beside her. But we, not alone. She nodded. That night, I finally understood something. I had spent years believing survival meant knowing when to run. Maybe survival was sometimes the opposite. Maybe it meant deciding what was worth staying for. The café changed after the archive release. People who had never spoken to me before began stopping at the counter. Some wanted information. Some wanted work. Most wanted food. That last group mattered more. The corporations that had supplied the lower sectors with subsidized meals began cutting their programs almost immediately. They claimed the decision was temporary. Everyone on level 31 understood what that meant. So I changed the sign. Free meals, no questions asked. I expected trouble. Instead, people simply came. We started with breakfast, then lunch, then dinner. Within a week, I was feeding hundreds of people every day. I couldn't afford it. That was the problem. I told Sarah that. She looked at my accounts and frowned. You, losing money. I know. You, go bankrupt. Probably. Mia was sitting beside her, sorting receipts. Then we, need more money. Sarah looked at me. I looked at Mia. She had said it like the solution was obvious. I smiled. Exactly. We built a network. Cargo crews donated surplus food. Mechanics repaired kitchen equipment. Refugees volunteered for meals. Traders contributed supplies. Even some station security officers began bringing medicine and blankets. Nobody called it charity. That word made people uncomfortable. We called it the Haven Network. Sarah became its systems coordinator. Her health continued improving, and once she was strong enough, she returned to maintenance work. She discovered that half the station's emergency infrastructure was decades out of date. Then she did what good engineers do. She fixed it. Mia became my unofficial assistant. She kept inventory. She learned the register. She could identify every regular customer by name. And she still stole sandwiches. I knew because the numbers never matched. One afternoon, I caught her holding one behind her back. Mia, she froze. Yes? Put it back. She slowly returned it. Why did you take it? She looked toward the door. There was a hungry kid outside. I sighed. Next time, ask. Then you, give me one? Probably. She smiled. Okay. The station began to notice us. Then the wider galaxy noticed. News ships arrived. Reporters asked for interviews. I refused most of them. One finally asked why a former military mechanic was feeding refugees instead of making money. I gave him the only answer I had. People were hungry. That became the headline. I didn't care. What mattered was that the cafe stayed open. Months passed. The investigations continued. Helix Meridian collapsed. The old military records disappeared into government archives. My past became public. People called me a smuggler, a criminal, a hero. None of those words felt accurate. I had done what I needed to do. Then one evening, Sarah walked into the cafe wearing her old engineering uniform. I've been offered my position back, she said. I smiled. Good. Mia ran around the counter. Mama got her job. Sarah hugged her. I watched them and realized something. The cafe had started as a business. Then it became a shelter. Then a network. And somewhere along the way, without anyone announcing it, it had become a home. Time passed more quietly than I expected. Haven 9 did not become a better place overnight. Stations that old don't change because one cafe owner decides to be stubborn. But things change. The clinics received supplies again. The food centers reopened. The lower sectors got reliable power. The Haven network grew beyond level 31. Cargo crews began bringing food from other systems. Traders donated equipment. Engineers volunteered their time. Someone even repaired the broken R on my sign. I was offended. It looked better. Mia was growing too. She was taller, louder, and considerably better at arguing. She had stopped stealing food. Mostly. Sarah recovered enough to return to work full-time. She became one of the station's most respected systems engineers, which meant people finally listened when she told them something was about to break. Usually, she was right. One evening, I found her sitting outside the cafe with Mia. Sarah was holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to me. I received the final medical report. I sat beside her. And I am going to be fine. I nodded. Good. She looked at me. You could say more. I am happy for you. That was better. Mia climbed onto the bench beside us. Jack? Yeah? Can I ask you something? Sure. Why don't I have a dad? I looked at Sarah. She didn't interrupt. I took a breath. I don't know. Did he leave? I don't know that either. She was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, would you like to be my dad? The station noise seemed to disappear. I looked at her. She wasn't joking. I had faced armed men without hesitation. I had moved illegal cargo through war zones. I had survived situations that should have killed me. None of that prepared me for one small girl asking a simple question. Are you sure? I asked. Mia nodded. I already decided. I looked at Sarah. She smiled. If you want, she said. I think she chose well. I looked back at Mia. All right, kiddo. She smiled. Then she hugged me. I held her carefully. For years, I had thought family was something you were born into. I was wrong. Sometimes family was the person who stole a sandwich. Sometimes it was the woman who opened her door to a stranger. Sometimes it was a broken cafe full of people who had nowhere else to go. And sometimes, if you were lucky, family was something you built yourself. A few months later, the adoption became official. There was no ceremony, no cameras, no speeches, just paperwork. The official stamped the final document. Mia looked at it, then at me. Does this mean I am really your daughter? I nodded. Yeah, she smiled. Good. Then she took my hand. We walked home together. For the first time in many years, I wasn't thinking about where I would go next. I was thinking about where we would go. Together. 3 years later, Miller's was still on level 31. The sign was brighter now. The kitchen was larger. There were always people waiting outside, and nobody was turned away because they couldn't pay. Sarah still worked on Haven 9's systems. The station was safer because of her. And Mia had grown into a confident young girl who knew exactly how to reach the highest shelf in my kitchen. She still stole sandwiches. I caught her one evening. She grabbed one from the counter and started running. Mia, she stopped at the door. We agreed, I called. You have to pay now. She turned around, walked back, and placed something tiny on the counter. A stone. She looked at me with complete seriousness. I paid. I picked up the stone. It was smooth and gray, probably from some forgotten maintenance corridor. I looked at her. Then I smiled. All right, kiddo. I slipped the stone into my pocket. Debt paid. Mia grinned and ran away. I watched her disappear into the crowded station. Years earlier, she had entered my café as a hungry child, frightened and desperate enough to steal a sandwich for her sick mother. I had thought I was giving her food. I was wrong. She had given me something too. A reason to stop running. A home. A family. I had spent most of my life believing survival meant fixing what was broken and moving on before the next disaster found you. Mia taught me something different. Sometimes you fix something because you intend to stay. That night, I closed the cafe late. Sarah was waiting outside. Mia was beside her, holding another sandwich. She looked at me innocently. I pointed at the sandwich. She smiled. I laughed. Then we walked home together through HFY 9. The station continued turning around us, enormous and ancient, carrying millions of lives through the darkness between stars. And somewhere on level 31, behind a repaired door and beneath a crooked sign, a little human cafe remained open. For anyone who was hungry. For anyone who had nowhere else to go. And for one little girl who had once come looking for a sandwich, and found a family instead.